Welcome to Southwest Florida Real Estate Update, hosted by local realtors Jim, Michael, and Morgan York of the York Real Estate Group of Downing Fry Realty. Our show will bring you the most up-to-date information on the local real estate market, featuring the leading experts in the real estate field.
Welcome to the Southwest Florida Real Estate Update. I'm Morgan York with the York Group of Downing Fry, and we're joined today by our host Jim York and his guest Chris Mitchell, owner of Brightway Insurance.
Thank you, Morgan, for the introduction. Well, Chris, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
This is our new season in 2018 that runs through 2019. So let's tell our viewers a little bit about yourself. I know you're our insurance agent that we use. So
yeah, I'm an agency owner with Brightway Insurance, and of course we specialize in personal lines products. So,
and how many insurance companies do you use?
We have the ability to write with over 100 with home and auto and life, etc.
And you're located in what's your territory?
Yeah, our territory is Lee and Collier County, and we are in Fort Myers.
Okay. Chris, what we want to do today is talk about, we went through Hurricane Irma last year, and it was traumatic for our area, which we did have a lot of claims, right?
Yes, sir.
And the state had a lot of claims also, which first thing I'd like to do is maybe go to our monitor here and bring up a picture of how many claims there were in the state.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah. And as you can see, I mean, up to this point, and these, by the way, are statistics from the Florida Office of Insurance Regulation. They're talking that as of April 6th, there have been roughly 924,000 claims, and they're estimating that over $8.5 billion is going to be paid out. And what's important to note is there are new claims being filed each and every day. So this is almost 2 months old, and that tally of total number of claims is slowly creeping toward 1 million.
Okay. And just before we came on set here, you were talking about you had some recent claims just today or yesterday, right?
Yes, yeah, we're receiving new claims. I mean, a lot of it is for roofing damage. I mean, some folks are not discovering some of the damage until we had, this rain event recently, last few days. And so it's revealing some problems, and we're also getting a lot of other loss assessment claims. But yes, they are almost daily we get new hurricane claims.
And what are the premiums? Where are we heading now, going into the next season here and next year?
Well, certainly the premiums are going to go up,
right?
And that's going to be for your homeowners insurance, for auto insurance, for flood insurance, and also for commercial properties. Some carriers, they've already implemented some increases, but most other ones, if they are going for an increase, which most are, they've filed it with the state, and that's a process. So we probably won't know what those increases are going to be until late 2018, beginning of 2019. But certainly most carriers are going through them now, and if they haven't, it's possible the other ones will go through it next year again as well.
In percentages, would you see, or is it by area, or?
It's both. So the way they typically do it is, of course, they have to base this on reinsurance costs, which are large insurance policies that are triggered in a hurricane, and they're based on zip code and area. So some areas, some pockets of a zip code in Collier might go up 10 to 15%, whereas others might go up 5 to 6%. And we see some that are around 20%. So it really depends on where you are.
In roof prices, I guess they've skyrocketed, right?
Yes, yeah. I mean, we have seen, specifically for tile roofs, we have seen some of those prices virtually double. In many instances with customers when they have had a claim, and I've seen too many to count as far as roof replacements, they'll get 3 estimates and they will be wildly different. So it just pays for someone to actually get multiple estimates to see where the best spot is for them.
In those prices, you think eventually will come down? Or is it just because of supply and demand? Or how long can they wait to have their roof replaced, I guess, depending on the damage?
Well, as far as the prices are concerned, I mean, yes, it definitely was a supply and demand issue.
Right.
So they will decrease. We actually have started to see perhaps maybe they're coming down a little bit because demand is slowing down.
Right.
But as far as a limitation to make a claim, the limitation is 2 to 3 years that you can make a hurricane claim. Now, obviously, the longer you wait, the harder it is to tie it back to the event.
Okay, how about pool and structure and closures or structures or?
Yeah, pool cages, same thing. I mean, we've seen the prices on those double in a lot of instances, and clearly that was one of the major issues. A lot of pool cages were down, screens gone, so you had your supply and demand issue, and those. A lot of our customers are still waiting, in fact, for their cages to go on, and it's been 9 months now.
Right. And how about exposure reduction?
Well, this is one of the things we're already starting to see. Some carriers, what they do after, and it doesn't necessarily take a hurricane to trigger this, but certainly this pushed the process through a little more quickly, is they identify certain areas where maybe they're insuring more homes than they would like based on the risk. And so what some carriers have started doing is sending out non-renewal notices, which means that, yes, we're staying on your policy now, but in 8 months, you are going to have to look for coverage elsewhere. And I expect some other carriers will probably going through similar. Now, I don't think it's going to be a situation where you're going to have no options, but certainly your best option might not be there anymore.
And there's some carriers, because they've had so many claims, a particular carrier, will they be moving out of the state of Florida because they can't absorb all the claims?
We have not heard of anything yet to that standpoint. And quite honestly, in today's market, the last 12 years, a lot of these companies have built themselves up financially. They're able to withstand a storm like this. But in some instances, you might have a carrier that is having problems, and another carrier will simply buy them and take over the policies. So,
in the claim process, what do you do on the claim process?
Well, typically you've got two options. You can either call the company directly, the insurance carrier, or you can call your agent. Now, in a disaster like this, the most efficient way of doing it is to call the company directly, the carrier, to get your process started.
Okay.
And then once it calms down, like now, for example, when the claims have slowed and you're trickling in, you certainly can call your agent to talk it over.
And people are hiring like attorneys, or what is this to help them with their claims?
Well, there's a significant problem in insurance here, and it's called assignment of benefits. Okay. And essentially, there are some companies where before they do the repairs, you sign a form, and it's not a statement of "I agreed for us to do the work." It is a statement that essentially you're relinquishing your rights. Okay, you're forfeiting any type of maybe additional claims you can
put against
receive. Now what happens is, it sounds nice because part of that contract is the insurance company is working directly with this general contractor, for example. Right. But what can happen is, if they're not paid out correctly, they can actually, the general contractor can put a lien on your home. And we actually have a customer right now that's going through this. So you do not want to sign those assignment of benefits form. It's typically better to get the claim initiated and get multiple estimates, but wait to talk with someone before you sign anything.
And just to make it clear, we're talking about replacement costs, so so people are sometimes been confused what replacement cost is. So if the roof is $30,000 versus what it could have been $20,000, it's the $30,000 we're talking about.
Right.
If the insurance company will give you the total $30,000, right?
Yes.
And what happens by the time they give you that price and it went up again, like the $34,000? Is the homeowner on the hook for the $4,000?
No, typically not. So most companies, it's full replacement for the roof. Now there are some policies where, depending on the age of a shingle roof, for example, the company might say, well, it's just depreciated value. But on a replacement type scenario, if you were to submit your roof replacement and say it's $30,000 for the tile, and by the time it gets approved, the contract is now $35,000, well, typically the insurance company has acknowledged you need a new roof based on the repairs, and so they'll pay that difference.
In home inspection, how's that process work?
Well, that's become even more important now. And so if you're buying a home, for example, you obviously typically always want to get a home inspection. Now, previously, before the storm, you would have that and you would take a look at it. Most homes would be in good condition. There's no hidden damage. Well, in this instance, insurance companies are paying particular attention to roofs. So on the inspection, you really should pay close example to what that inspector says, and perhaps ask them, okay, how much life left does this have? Is this, and ask whatever insurance company you're talking to, get their opinion on if this is going to pass, because we've seen a lot of instances where a customer buys a home, there's been a repair done for the shingle, and the inspector says it looks fine. Well, the insurance company goes out and they find a lot of curling shingles, for example, granular loss, and they say, you have to replace the roof or else we're canceling you. So try to avoid that scenario by getting as much information as you can up front.
Okay, Chris, we're going to take a little break, okay, and then we're going to talk about what key coverages you need for hurricane insurance, and we'll be right back.
Thinking of buying or selling a home in Naples, Marco Island, Bonita, or Estero, Florida? Think of the most experienced York Real Estate Group, associated with the #1 brokerage in Southwest Florida, Downing Fry Realty, which produces yearly real estate transactions of over $1 billion. Jim, Michael, and Morgan make up the York Real Estate Group of Downing Fry Realty, with over $275 million in sales transactions, along with offering over 25 combined years' experience in the local market. The Yorks can offer the experience and trust you need in a realtor. Call them today at 239-273-6727 or visit their website at www.naplesyorkrealestate.com.
Welcome back. Chris, let's talk about deductibles, okay? So I guess it's what the buyer, and not the buyer, the homeowner feels comfortable with, or
Yeah.
explain that a little bit.
Well, as you might imagine, having a hurricane, people became very acquainted with what their hurricane deductible is.
Right.
And on a single family home, it's a percentage of the amount of coverage you have on the dwelling. So that can be pretty expensive. I mean, if you have your standard 2% deductible on hurricane and you have a $300,000 reconstructive cost for a house, it's $6,000.
Right.
So you do, what a lot of carriers are offering now is lower deductibles for hurricane. So for example, you might be able to change that $6,000 deductible down to $500 or $1,000. And of course, it raises the premium, but it certainly is an option. And then you have got a couple carriers, and maybe another one that's coming on, that is they're offering standalone policies to pay for your entire hurricane deductible.
The difference, right?
Yes, yeah. So that actually is a pretty good option in a lot of instances. You know, it typically will pay for itself. It takes you 16, 17 years, but.
Yeah, I think I think it could be a good idea, because what we heard was a lot of people didn't have that ready cash in order to fix things. So
Yep.
our banker was saying they shouldn't even have a line of credit maybe in place just in case of something like that.
Yeah, it's a really good option, and we found that those policies actually worked very well for those that carried them. Yep.
How about pool cages? What's your?
Well, look at your policy to make sure it's covered. It can be covered in different ways too. That's just ask your agent, because most companies have an endorsement on the policy for hurricanes, and inside of that, some companies say, okay, we'll cover the aluminum structure, and some say we'll cover the screens also, and some do a depreciated value on the structure. So you could have wildly different amounts paid out to you if you lost your entire cage, depending on the amount of coverage and also how it's covered. So, you know, another thing to do is to look at the amount of coverage now, because what we've seen is, you know, your standard 1,000 square foot pool cage, for example, before the storm, you know, you might be able to put that up for around 10,000. Well, immediately after the storm, you're talking 15 to closer to 20.
That's right.
So.
And when you're replacing all this stuff, how do you handle the county permitting process?
As far as, well, the
codes, I mean.
The companies that are doing roofs, that are doing cages, they are required to pull those permits on those. And so they should verify they're doing that.
Yeah, because you don't want them you won't qualify them if it's not been permitted
That's
correctly, right?
Specifically on the roofs, yes. If they do not pull a permit, there's no permit available in file, you will not receive what is typically a substantial savings and one discount for your wind mitigation.
And what's this about the coverage, the county, the ordinance and law coverage?
So ordinance and law coverage, what it is it covers you for building and code changes that come into place. So if you have, for example, if your house burns down and maybe half of the structure is still standing, if you don't have that coverage, then you will probably be required to pay for the portion of tearing the rest of the house down and bringing it up to code, which that can be substantial. And this comes into play a lot of times in partial losses. So you want to look at your policy to see if you have it, called ordinance and law. And typically, if you've got a home, you always want some coverage typically, but if you've got the older the home, maybe 15 years or older, you typically want, say, 25%. So you want to check that.
Okay, and do you have flood policies?
Yeah, flood insurance obviously has become, a hot topic again, because we had fairly substantial flooding in certain areas, and it could have been much, much worse.
And you sometimes need it even if you're not in a flood zone, right? That's what you've been telling us in our seminars.
Yeah, and it's well, the whole state's a flood zone,
Right,
but
that's what you're saying.
The type of flood zone is called a preferred flood zone.
Right.
And those types of zones are not required by a mortgage, but ironically, that's where most of the claims typically occur. So you definitely want to check that and make sure you have contents coverage on your policy. because if a flood comes in, you're going to have furniture damage, you're going to have that damage to your carpet, flooring, all that stuff. So you want to make sure you have all that coverage, but contents is a key. Sometimes people leave it off because it saves money. Understandably, it's an option for you, but it's something to check.
In wind and rain coverage?
Wind-driven rain, yes. Essentially what that is most carriers in the state have typically been excluding that coverage. And what it is in the policy there's a statement there that says, rain or sand or sleet that is blown through into your home unless an opening is created. So if a window is blown out, or if a door is blown out, or you have a hole in your roof and water comes in, you're covered. However, a lot of times you might have the seals, maybe they were a little older and they weren't maintained well. You can have a lot of water blow through those or cracks in the stucco, and a lot of times that's excluded in policies, and that can add up to a tremendous amount of damage. So you want to ask if that's covered or not. Some companies don't cover it at all. There are other companies that do. So you definitely want to check on that, because there were quite a few losses from the storm.
Well, Chris, I thank you for coming on the show, and I know we use you with our clients, and you're like a walking encyclopedia when it comes to insurance, and you return your phone calls and you give us quotes just like that. So I'd like to thank you, and I'd like to thank the Naples Daily News for letting us have the opportunity to film our show here today. Thank you.